Recording, okay. Now, council member, let me make him co-host. He's co-host.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. Hello. How are you?
Doing well. How are you all?
Wonderful. Oh,
Great.
I see the mayor also. I'll have to make him co-host. Yes. Yeah. So I think it's time we start. It's still 3 minutes more.
3 minutes.
Okay. So I'll change the speaker view. So we'll wait for a few seconds. We'll be starting in a few seconds now. Okay. Thank you everyone for joining. On behalf of India House, I welcome this very informative webinar on a very important topic, Census 2020. I'm Colonel Vipin Kumar, Executive Director of India House. And as you know, India House is a non-profit community service center where Estonians, regardless of their nationality, religion, race, and ethnicity, can come to enrich their lives. We offer a lot of programs and services to the community, which are offered either free of cost or at a very discounted price. Like charity medical cleaning, after school classes, twice monthly free food distribution, free legal consultation on family law and immigration law, technology classes for volunteers, for seniors, language tutorials, yoga classes thrice a week, dance fitness classes, meditation session, and our outdoor sports include cricket and soccer and indoor table tennis. We also host affordable Serene Harris Clinic in India House. During these difficult times, we are partially closed, but we are offering online classes on yoga, meditation, technology, line dance, Zumba, BodyX, etc. We have by now held 160 classes online and various webinars since March 24th. In addition, we are offering free teleconsultation on health clinic, family law, immigration law, and computer support. During this pandemic, we have also served meals to healthcare workers at various hospitals across the city. And from July onwards, we have resumed our twice a month free food distribution program, which serves 400 needy families every month. And this is in collaboration with Houston Food Bank. Our mission is to unite culture, serve community by bringing resources, education, and services to an Indian culture to Houstonian. True to this mission, we have collaborated today with City of Houston to bring this informative webinar to you. I won't be talking too much about the importance of census because it is important throughout the nation. I'll not go into too many details because we have a very knowledgeable and impressive lineup of panelists today. I can only say that census data determines how more than $1 trillion in federal funds will be allocated each year for numerous programs and services like Medicaid, highway planning, construction, special education, etc., etc., and etc. So before moving further, I would like to introduce India House President, Dr. Manish Rungta, to briefly say a few words. Dr. Manish Rungta.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, I'm rounding at the hospital, so you have to forgive me if there's any background noise. But as President of India House, certainly is an honor and a privilege to welcome you all to this very informative webinar. Our mission at India House is really to unite cultures, and we pride ourselves in the diverse community that we serve. There's no better way to serve the community than to be involved in the U.S. Census, which is so very important and really symbolizing the diversity that America has, and for each one of us to be represented. So I am very honored and privileged on behalf of India House to be participating in this webinar and also to be participating in the U.S. Census program. So welcome everyone, and I will let the meeting get started with the other folks because I'm sure they've got many, many important things to tell us. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Dr. Manish Rungta. Now, I'll request, before I request Mayor Sylvester Turner to kindly say a few words or let us know the importance of census, I just wanted to say that please take part in the polls, which are there. All the attendees can go to the polls and give their yes or no answer. And at the end of the webinar, we have an attractive prize, and we'll let you know how to get this prize. So so I will just talk a little bit about Mayor Turner. In fact, to me, talking about Mayor Turner is something, giving his intro is something like showing light to the sun. So I won't go too much in detail. He's very popular mayor of ours. He was elected in 2015 and then re-elected in 2019. And he's Houston's 62nd mayor. And since taking the office, he has eliminated a $160 million budget shortfall in record time. Led the city's remarkable rebound from Hurricane Harvey, championed historic pension reform, chaired on the 217 World Series winning Houston Astros, hosted a successful Super Bowl, expanded municipal investment in renewable energy, and led the winning bid to host the World Petroleum Congress in 2020. I can go on and on, but considering it's better to hear directly from him, I request the City of Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner to kindly say a few words.
Thank you so very much, and thank you all for having me, and to the president of India House, and I know that the doctors at the hospital, and to the executive director, to all of the others, Councilmember Pollard, who is a part of this presentation today, and the rest of you. Let me thank you. I happen to be the 62nd mayor, as you indicated, of the city of Houston. The good news is that if you reverse that, you'll get my age. You know, I am 26 years old and counting. So I'm a young mayor. Um, Look, let me just say before I move on, I certainly want to acknowledge the anniversary of India's 74th independence. I know the celebration was this past Saturday. It was different because of the pandemic, but I'm glad that the community celebrated virtually with Consul General of India hosting India's tricolor in front of India House. Now let me just say, just this morning at City Council, we had a very robust conversation about the census this morning, and in large part is because the last day to get your census done for right now is September the 30th. It was scheduled to be October the 30th, but they've moved it down to September 30th. Hopefully, that will be reversed. But we're getting quickly to that last day to get your census in. And right now in the city of Houston, we're at about 54.6%, which means that there are like 45% of Houstonians who have yet to respond to the census, and that's a huge number. 45% of Houstonians. It almost means like almost 1 out of 2 Houstonians has not responded to the census. And this is the most diverse city in the United States. We have people come from every walk of life. It would just be hurtful for all of us if that diversity is not reflected in our census response. And so we're here today for this webinar being hosted at India House. And I just want to start off by saying, as Mayor of City of Houston, let me just encourage all of us who are listening to just be an ambassador of one, to go out and ask other people, have you responded to the census? And if you haven't, ask them to please do so. And quite frankly, ask them why they haven't done it. And it doesn't take very long at all. Let me just provide a few reasons, and then I'll yield to some of the others. And I do want to thank the U.S. Census Bureau for continuing to count all of our residents in the 2020 Census Survey. Now, the Census 2020 is important because it is the official population count for the country, for each state and geographic area within the state. We have a constitutional obligation to count every living person within our geographical limits. I don't care if you're just 1 second old or you're 110. We have an obligation to count you, regardless of where you come from, what your language, your religion, whether you're documented or undocumented. We have a responsibility to count you. If you live in the city of Houston, you need to respond to the census. The Houston population is projected to overtake Chicago in population by 2025, but that won't take place if we stop right now and only, let's say, 55% of Houstonians respond to the census. We're not going to overtake anybody, and we're going to fall short ourselves. The census data helps policymakers decide how federal dollars how much in terms of federal dollars Houston will be allocated for our schools, our hospitals, medical care, fire department, housing assistance, and nutrition for our children, as well as our families. And policymakers use census data to appropriate federal funding for medical care programs that help heal Houstonians and keep us strong, just like we're facing COVID-19. Look, even once COVID-19 passes, the odds are there'll be another pandemic or there'll be another crisis that will come down the pipe. And we need to make sure that we have all of the resources that's available to us at our disposal to meet the needs of every person living in in our city. But we're not going to be in that position unless people seriously take the time and respond to the census. When it comes to transportation, there are more people coming into our area, and we need to be able to move people from point A to point B efficiently, and not just based on their cars or their trucks, but when it comes to public transit, when it comes to providing multimodal forms of transportation. And in responding to the census, it helps us to pull down those transportation dollars, those grant dollars that are available. And in the absence of doing that, other cities will be taking dollars that rightfully belong to the city of Houston. The census data fund available housing for essential workers who provide services that keep Houston running, supportive services for veterans, the elderly, and persons with disability, again, tied to the census. Everyone in the country, everyone in Houston needs to be counted, and it doesn't matter what your census status is. And then lastly, just in terms of dollars and cents for every person counted, that's the equivalent to anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500 per year for the next 10 years. And we've said repeatedly, for every 1% that's not counted, for the city of Houston, that comes to about $250 million. So if you take 45% of the population of Houston that has yet to respond, take that 45 and multiply it times 250 million, and that will give you some idea of the federal dollars of the next decade that will not be coming to the city of Houston. And then lastly, when it comes to representation, political representation, it's just so important for the diversity of our city, of our county, and the surrounding counties to be reflected in our census numbers. It's just in your best interest, in our best interest, for the most diverse city in the United States to show up. So let me encourage all of us to do everything we can between now and then. I know this is the pandemic, and and people just don't respond to a flyer. Yeah, we'll have to knock on doors. We'll have to use trusted partners. We'll have to talk to people, immigrants, refugees, homeless, transit populations, people who may be distrustful of government, but we have to find a way over the next 30 days to reach them and get people to respond. And I want to thank everybody that's a part of this panel discussion and everyone that's out there doing their very best to get people to respond to the census. Thank you so very much for having me.
Thank you so much, Mayor Turner. This was something which we all have to understand, the importance of Census 2020. And now, before I invite our next speaker, Edward Pollard, council member, I just wanted to very quickly introduce the panelists. I just want to show who they are. And so very quickly, we have from the Census Bureau, of course, we have Mayor Turner is spoken, and also council member Edward Pollard will be giving you a lot of words of wisdom and importance of census. But we also wanted to, from census, we have Alendra. Can you spotlight? Okay. And then we have Brianna. And then from City of Houston, we have Sam Patton. And Sasha Marshall. So who had been coordinating with me for this. And thank you so much, Sasha, for organizing this wonderful event. And now I'll little bit brief as somebody said when he looked at council member Edward Pollard, she in fact, council member, she said that here is a gentleman who has potential. I mean, everybody feels envy of his wonderful personality. He's very handsome, very effective, very popular. He's a product of Southwest Houston. I won't go too much in detail because we want to hear more from him. And I'll say professionally, he's a principal owner of Pollard Legal Group, LLC, a boutique civil litigation law firm located in District J. Edward is also the founder of Suits for Success, a 501c3 organization that mentors teen boys on life skills at District J High School. And I would like to mention here, India House is also located on District J, and we and Council Member Edward Pollard have been doing a lot of work together to help the community. And his passion for serving the community I have been seeing. As a council member, Edward serves as Vice Chair of Budget Fiscal Affairs and serves on the committees of Economic Development, Ethics, Elections, and Council Governance, Public Safety and Homeland Security, and also Childhood and Youth. He's a lifetime member of the historic Antioch Missionary Baptist Church downtown and is married with 2 children. Without much ado, I'll now welcome Council Member Edward Pollard for this, to say a few words.
Thank you, Colonel Kumar. And I want to thank you and India House for hosting this webinar. It's extremely important, and I'm glad that we're able to do it. Also want to thank the mayor for joining us, the U.S. Census Bureau, all of our community partners, stakeholders, and of course, everyone who is tuning in to get information. I am Councilmember Edward Pollard. I represent District J for the City of Houston. District J is Southwest Houston, which represents Gulfton, Sharpstown, Westwood, Brayburn, and Alief. India House is located within our boundary lines, and we've been working together in many facets, trying to engage the community, not only when it comes to COVID, not only when it comes to community outreach, but now with the census. And so I want to thank everyone who played a part in putting this webinar together, and I look forward to giving out some helpful information. So Colonel Kumar, would you like me to speak further on the census, or do we want to get into the actual program?
So we are on actual program, and in the sense, what we had thought of was we can take question answers. And Sasa, can you throw, how do you want to proceed? Yeah.
Thank you for joining us today. So we are here talking about census, and there are a lot of myths with census. So we would like for Councilmember Pollard to talk about some of those myths with our Census Bureau staff. We hear a lot of things that aren't exactly true and are inaccurate, and that keeps people from responding to the census, and we want to make sure that everyone has an informed opinion about taking the census so that they will respond and make sure we get the federal dollars we need to come to Houston. It's rightfully ours. That's our federal fair share. So we have a list of questions. Councilmember Pollard, do you have them?
Yes.
Okay. Whenever you would like to start, you can pitch a question to our experts at the Census Bureau. We have Sam Patton on the phone and Brianna Drisdale. If you would like to throw them these myths, and let's see what comes out.
Great, great. So yeah, these are some really good questions that people have some misconceptions about. And so let's see if the U.S. Census Bureau can help give us clarity on these important facts. Number one, I do not need to complete the census. They can get my information from my tax returns. Is that true or false?
I think I'm going to kick it off. That is false. The Census Bureau does not share information with any other agencies or entities within the United States. So we will not be able to cross-reference some other document that you file among the year. This is your only shot to respond and be counted and represented in your community. So false. We cannot get your information from a tax return.
Great. Second question. The census survey is available in Farsi. True or false?
Thank you. That is true, actually. You can respond to the census online and over the phone in 13 different languages, including English. And we also have 59 non-English languages, including American Sign Language and also including Farsi, which can be accessed on 2020census.gov. You just go to the top right of your screen and you click the little globe and you'll see all the different languages we have available there.
Great. Number 3, I already took the census last year. True or false?
That would be false. This is the decennial census, so it happens every 10 years. So the last time we did this was 2010. So if you received information from the Census Bureau last year, most likely you received our American Community Survey, which is a different type of survey. Just so you all know, the Census Bureau operates 365 days of the year. There are other surveys and information that we publish to the public for use. So that was not the 2020 census. That may have been some other type of survey that we do.
Great, thank you. The next question is, will the census information be used to track me? True or false?
That is absolutely false. Your data is kept completely confidential. Me and Brianna and Alejandra, when we first started working for the census, we had to take an oath for life that we would protect any kind of confidential information. And if we break that oath, we spend 5 years in federal prison and have to pay a $250,000 fine. And towards the end, Sasha's going to go over some of the questions, and you'll see they're very simple, very easy, and none of that is worth going to jail for any of us sharing. The information cannot be used to track you. We will not be sharing it with any federal agency, not ICE, not police, not your landlord. So it is kept completely safe and secure.
Great. Okay, true or false? The census is for everyone.
That is true. We want everyone that is residing in the United States to be represented and be counted. We want all of the communities to be heard and to be seen. So there is not an immigration status or an age limit on who gets to respond to the census. If you are born, if you are alive, if you're here, then we want you to respond and be counted. So it is for everyone that is residing in the United States.
Great. The next question is, the census survey is just too long to fill out. True or false?
That would be false. On average, the census only takes about 10 minutes to fill out. And like I said, Sasha's going to go over the questions a little bit later. And it's 9 simple questions, only about 10 minutes of your time. And you really are shaping the future of your community for the next 10 years.
Great. The next question, completing the census today will leave a legacy for my family tomorrow. True or false?
That is absolutely true. So your responses today impact the future for not only yourself, but for the people in your family, the children, the youth to come. So we want everyone to know how important it is to be counted, to be represented. A lot of the data that the that the census collects is used to track down ancestry and family lineage. So it's important that we know and we leave this mark so that future generations can know that we were here, so that the resources, the programs, the dollars come to our communities for those people to benefit in the future. So absolutely, you're definitely leaving an impact for generations to come when you just fill out these 9 questions and get counted on the 2020 census.
Thank you. And my last question that I want to know is, because of the pandemic, a lot of people have been losing their jobs or unable to work. Is the Census Bureau hiring right now? True or false?
That is true. It is not too late to apply for a census job. You can go to 2020census.gov/jobs to apply. And you can also check the pay rate for your counties. And I know we are in Harris County, which when you go online and you look at the pay rates, you'll see Harris County is one of the highest paying counties in all of Texas. So it is a very great high paying position. Flexible hours, you can set your own schedule. So I do encourage you, if you are looking for work, consider a census job at 2020census.gov/jobs.
Great. Thank you all very much for answering my true or false questions.
So thank you so much, Council Member. Now we are moving forward. I'm relaunching the poll, and I request all the attendees and they can now once again resume the polling. And after this, what we are going to do is the question and answers are open. So if you have any question, please type it. You can type it in the chat, and you can also type it in the question answer. And in the meantime, if any of the panelists would like to, say something while we await the questions, I will read the question when these come. But in the meantime, I would request Council Member or our Census Bureau members or CESA, whoever wants to say something till we get some questions and we'll answer these. You must be having a bunch of questions already with you. So if you'd like to answer these, most welcome.
So I wanted to add to the conversation and try to explain to people why the census is so important to fill out. You need to look at the census as basically a RSVP. It's a head count. So if you were having a party, you would need to know how many people were going to be there so that you can properly spend the right amount of money on food, on drinks, on supplies. If you don't have an accurate head count, and let's say you only prepared for 10 people because only 10 people RSVP'd, but 50 people showed up, then you won't have enough food and drinks and supplies for everyone there. And so the census is basically a RSVP. It's a head count for the federal government to know how many people are in a certain area so that they can designate the right amount of funding for different programming and training and infrastructure for your area town. And if you are not counted, they don't know you're there, and then we lose out on money that could be used for our community. And so it's important to look at the census as a RSVP so that you are counted, so that you get the dollars that you and your community deserve.
Councilmember, I have a question. If I can take this liberty and make use of my being as a panelist, ask this question. I was told that we get about $5,000 per person to the city for the development work per person. So is it true? How does it, can you throw some light on it?
Yeah, to my understanding is we get about $1,000 to $1,500 per person. And for every 1%, I believe, of people who do not fill out the census in the city of Houston, that's equivalent to about $250,000 and 250 million, I'm sorry, 250 million, which is, when you think about it, I mean, that is a lot of money. And right now, currently, we have about 45% of Houstonians that have not filled out the census. And I think we're about 10% below the national average. So we have a lot of work that needs to be done over the next 30 days. District J, Colonel, where you and I are located, we're actually at the bottom. We only have a return rate of about 48%. And so less than half of the people in District J, Southwest Houston, is completing the census. And that's for various reasons. We have culture barriers, we have language barriers. Over 85% of our residents live in apartments, so it's hard to target. We don't have the enumerators out there like we thought we would have, knocking on all the doors because of COVID. So there are many obstacles out there, and that's why it's going to be important for each one of us to do all that we can within our own network and our own circles to really push that information out there. There is a fear factor for some communities that they believe if they publish or put forth any information to the federal government that it will be tracked. and then that could have some consequences for their family or their colleagues. But as the Census Bureau stated before, they are not keeping a record of who those people are for any deportation reasons or any employment reasons. It's strictly a confidential count, so that we make sure that we have the proper amount of dollars coming into our area. And so about $1,000 to $1,500 per person, which is a lot when you think about the third, well, right now the fourth largest city in the country, headed towards the third, if we get the proper head count and everybody participates in the census.
Thank you so much. You can understand the importance of census. I have a question, and whoever would like to answer this, can you explain, and the question is from Alice Lee, can you explain what the enumerators will be doing? Also, will they have identification with them? Just want to prevent scams. These are people posing as utility workers, for instance.
So the enumerators go door to door in order to help people who haven't responded complete their census. This year they have iPads, which they will be using to fill out the forms with the residents. They do have identification. The Census Bureau has also worked with local law enforcement to let them know what a census worker will look like as far as their badge and how to identify if this person is actually working with the Census Bureau. We do have other ways that they can verify that that person in your neighborhood is an actual worker. And the Census Bureau does try to hire people in their neighborhood where they reside in order for that person to be more comfortable in the area, and in hopes that residents will recognize a familiar face or someone that looks like them. And if Sam or Alejandra would like to add to that, please do.
Yeah, I would like to add, a census worker will never ask anyone for their social security, credit card, or bank information. On the census itself, we actually ask for a phone number, and we only call to verify data. We will not call you for any other purpose. So that is another way. If someone calls you saying they work with the Census Bureau and they're asking for bank accounts, social security, or money, please know that is not a real census worker. Thank you.
Okay, here's a question for Council Member Edward Pollard. Are there resources available to nonprofit entities that are willing to organize, go out in the community and work to convince the community to take the census?
Yes, you can reach out to our office as well as to the Census Bureau and to the City of Houston. There's all types of ways that we're going to be creative in the way in which we can use volunteers to go out and engage our communities when it comes to the importance of the census. I tell people all the time, it's really not the message, it's more the messenger. And so we need people who are trusted partners within their own community. So people who are coming from their own nonprofits, grassroots organizations, churches, property management teams, people who have a rapport and a relationship with the people in their community, so that when they're conveying the message on why it's important, some of those fear factors and those walls of apprehension are no longer there. It's different for me as a politician to go up to someone that I do not know and who does not know me and may not speak the language, and I try to convince them on the importance of filling out the census, as opposed to someone who goes to their church, who looks like them, who speaks their language, to implore upon them on why it's important to fill out the census. So if there's anyone out there who wants to volunteer, or any groups out there who want to volunteer, reach out to our office. You can also reach out to the U.S. Census. I'm pretty sure they have resources and materials that they can provide, in ways in which we all can get out there and do our part to make sure that the people in our circle and our network have the proper information.
Thank you, Council Member. I have another question from one of the attendees saying that, what happens if somebody does not take the census? Is it some kind of a obligatory requirement? Is it a mandatory? Or how does it work?
So I'll go first, and then I'll turn it over to the U.S. Census. If you don't fill out the census, what you're basically doing is taking money out of your pocket and out of the community. No, there won't be a criminal charge or any type of civil violation for not filling out the census. But what you are doing is you are increasing the likelihood that there will be less money in your community for certain programs, certain funding, certain school activities, representation when it comes to government, a myriad of things. So although you won't have maybe a criminal violation or a civil penalty, you will feel the brunt of not filling out the census because your area will not have the same amenities that maybe another area of town was able to receive because they filled out the census at a greater rate.
Anyone else would like to add something to it?
Sure, I can add on to that. I think Councilmember Pollard really did nail it that you're missing out on resources for your community. I would like to add the census actually is constitutionally mandated in Article 1, Section 2 of the Constitution. So it actually is something that's required by law. But if I can say, we're not an enforcement agency, we're not coming out after anybody if they didn't fill out the census. But as Councilmember Pollard said, you really need to think about what you're missing out on for your community, all the federal funding, all the political representation that is not going to be coming back to you if your household is not counted in the census.
Folks, you know how important it is to fill the census, and I would now encourage everyone, whoever is listening to this wonderful talk on as an attendee or as Facebook, please fill census. It's very important. It brings the dollars to us. It is used for the development of the city for all of you.
And when I filled out the census, I actually did it for my whole family. So it was me, but I filled it out for my wife and my 2 children. And it took a few minutes, but it got our entire household filed at one time. So they didn't have to do it, to my understanding. I did it for everyone. I put their information in, and so it was a very efficient process to where everyone in your household may not have to do it. Just maybe one person in the household does it for everyone.
So another question, an accurate count is very important because the city of Houston will use the census data for restricting. A growth in the population could add more council district seats. Are there current efforts with universities trying to have college students respond to census?
Yes, absolutely there is. And when me and Brianna first started with the census, one of our main missions was to work with the colleges and the universities to get the students counted. And there's actually 2 ways that we count college students because you have those living in dorms and those living off campus. And those living in dorms are actually counted through a separate operation we have called group quarters, where they go to the housing administration and get them counted through the housing administration that way. But the ones that we are really concerned about are those living off campus because they are the ones that actually need to self-respond to the census. And so that's how we've been working with, student government, from all the way from student government up to the administration, the chancellors, vice chancellors at these universities to help get the word out, encourage those living off campus that, hey, you guys do need to respond to the census because this is just like everybody else. It's affecting political representation and federal funding for the next 10 years. And especially for college students, one of the funding purposes from the census actually goes to Pell Grants. So it is directly affecting college students.
I have a question for the Census Bureau. For all the parents that are out there who value education and they understand that education is the most constant way or consistent way for people in their family to have success later in life, how does the census impact schools?
Well, a lot of the funding that schools utilize is powered by census data and census responses. Universities also receive funding from the federal government. I know recently the CARES Act allowed for a lot of the students to receive emergency grants. And in the news article about it, it was directly tied to the census responses and the populations in these areas. So there's definitely a huge impact as far as education and schools for generations and for future years to come, as far as resources that the students and the leaders at these universities and primary schools receive to be able to empower their community with different programs and activities. If the population count is not accurate, you can imagine that a lot of these programs may be suspended or cut, or there may be a lack of availability of the resources for certain areas, depending on the response rate.
Thank you.
And if I may add to that, if that's okay. Also, if schools are enrolled in free lunches, that is also a program that gets funding through the census. Head Start, a lot of things that schools need depend on census data for their funding and obtaining of money. And I would just like to bring it back to a point in the past. If you do not fill out your census, it's very possible that you might get up to 7 visits from someone. So actually it's a slightly different. They won't be talking to you or knocking on your door, but they will leave the census form. So if you don't want someone bugging you, then please fill out your census online. It really is super quick and takes like 9 minutes or less.
Thank you so much. I think it's time for Cesar to take care and go through her presentation. What do you think, Sasha?
Yes, thank you for a very lively discussion. Those were very important questions about the census, although we didn't get any in the chat. People who are watching this now or watching this later will be able to get their questions answered. Those are very popular questions. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Councilmember Pollard. I understand that you have to go. We really appreciate you being here. You're welcome to stay, but we know how busy you are.
Yeah. I want to thank you all for putting this on as well. Yes, I have to get to my next event, but this is extremely important. Please reach out to our office if you need any assistance with anything. We want to have a strong push over the next month and a half, especially for Southwest Houston, to get our numbers up. Every dollar counts, every person counts. So thank you very much to all the community stakeholders, to the U.S. Census Bureau, and especially to India House for your community partnership with us. This is extremely helpful, and I'm looking forward to using this information to push us to the top. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Council Member. Thank you very, very much.
I'm going to share my screen because I want to see what are the results from our poll. Colonel Kumar, do you have the results? There was a poll earlier asking if people who are participating have taken the census. Unmute, Colonel.
Sorry, I showed that trick of pressing the space bar and unmuting. Okay, I forgot. 92% said yes, and 8% have said no.
Okay, you 8% people, we are going to challenge you. We want you to go to my2020census.gov right now. We're going to help you take the census. We call this a census walkthrough. I'm going to share my screen and show you this presentation that we had for you. So that we all can look at the questions together. And I want to say that I did not take my census online because I like the interaction. I was a former enumerator with the Census Bureau, so I too have taken the lifelong oath, and I participated in previous census surveys. So I wanted to see what the experience would be like if I took the census in person. So This was me taking the census just yesterday. If everybody wanted to know what that looks like, that is a census worker. She's also my neighbor. Her name is Anita, and we trade cookies every week. So she did my census, and that is the point. This is our community. It's people just like you that are the enumerators in the community taking the census. They're in your neighborhoods. They are your neighbors. And when I was an enumerator, I really enjoyed my experience because I got to learn a lot about my community. So if you are interested in employment with the Census Bureau, I know we talked about that. Yes, they are hiring. I do recommend them. I made me a little change on the side, and I really appreciated that flexible work schedule, and I appreciated getting to know my community. So that's a goofy picture of me and Anita, my neighbor, and that's her census ID. If this is what you should see, she has on her PPE. We got a little close because we're neighbors, but I'll work on my social distancing some more, but they will be wearing PPE. She has her badge with her picture on there and her name and an expiration date, and the badge is issued by the Department of Commerce. So that's what a Census Bureau looks like. Looks just like you, looks just like your neighbor, looks like someone you know or a loved one. Please take the census however you can, and you can also take it in person now. So this is how you fill out the census. We want you to go to my2020census.gov and let's start. This is how easy it is. You're going to get to this page and it's going to say shape your future. That is the Census Bureau's campaign for the decennial census. And as you can see, it's on my2020census.gov, and you can click on start questionnaire. But as we said earlier, the census is available in many different languages, and you see them here. You speak French, so do they. Speak Polish or Portuguese, so does the census survey. You can click at the bottom of the screen and indicate what language you would like to complete your census survey. Okay, this is the second page you'll get to. If you take your census online, it shows you, you go to this screen, it says your 12-digit census ID. What is a census ID? Okay, this is a census ID. If you have gotten one of those mailers at your door recently, if you have yet to take the census, you would get a census ID. You can use that ID to complete your census online. Well, what if you don't have it? It's cool too. You click right underneath there. If you do not have census ID, click here, and you will still be able to take the census with no problem online. So they will ask you, where were you living on April 1st, 2020? That is the day where you are, that's census day. Where you are counted is where you live as of April 1st, 2020. If you were in the US, you click the appropriate box, Puerto Rico or someplace else. Where were you living on April 1st? Okay, this is where you give your address. Please do not use a P.O. box. Use your physical address. This is where you live the majority of the calendar year, okay? So I know some people may have second homes. This is not for your second home. This is for your primary address, where you live for the majority of the calendar year. So you enter your full name and your telephone number. I know sometimes we get a lot of spam calls. Thank you that the spam calls are sometimes identified on your cell phone now. This is not for that purpose though, okay? This is just to follow up with you in case they have a question about the responses that you submitted. And of course, your number will not be shared, just like any of your census response information will not be shared. So it will ask you household questions. You start here. And it'll say how many people were living or staying with you. I clicked 3 for my husband and my son, and we actually lived at another address. So she was able to complete my census at my previous address where I lived in April 1st. And let me tell you, when I took the census yesterday, even though I did it in person, it still took me 11 minutes, and I timed it because I wanted you to know that even if you take it in person, it still doesn't take you that long to complete. You will enter how many people are staying with you at your address as of April 1st of this year. So if you need to add people, this will ask you questions about your other household members. If you make a mistake, you can always remove your responses before you submit them. And make sure to keep an accurate census. This is for, they keep asking, you know, do you have any additional people that are living with you that you forgot? Is there a baby you didn't list? Is someone maybe sleeping on your couch and maybe they were temporary, but they ended up staying? We want to make sure that everyone is counted. They don't want to miss anyone and they don't want to count people twice. So this is why they asked this question. On April 1st, 2020, was the house or apartment or mobile home? They want to know, was it owned by you or rented or occupied without rent? This collects other data. So this census questions collect other household data that helps feed other surveys. Things that maybe monitor other compliance with other laws, maybe home mortgage lending laws and things like that. So that's why they ask these questions. Your answer, who owned the property, just to make sure who is supposed to be there. We don't want to count anyone twice, and it's to collect other household data for other housing surveys. And of course, you enter your gender for each household member. And you enter the correct date of birth and it'll give you the correct age and you verify that this information is correct, okay? You just wanna make sure how old were you. The census does not share responses, only I believe in someone from the Census Bureau, please correct me, after 70 years. Is that correct? So that's when it comes up on the ancestry.com. If people do those things and it says, oh, my grandfather in 1930 took the census, well, it might be, 2130 by the time we see your census responses. So they're just trying to make sure we have the correct age and the correct year for this information. We're collecting information about ethnicity. So they just want to know if you are of Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin. And that's just to count the population. Your information, you see that so far, and there won't be a citizenship question on this survey. We'll ask you for your race here, white, Black, African American, Native American, or Alaskan Native, Chinese, and so on and so forth. And then you'll proceed to the final question if you have no more people in your household to add. And so it'll select all that apply. Do you usually live someplace else? They want to make sure that you are not counted in two different places. They want to make sure that you're counted in your primary residence. So this is to weed out those responses. This is where you submit your questionnaire. This is how easy it is. You can edit, go back and edit your responses or go back and review to make sure that your survey is accurate. If not, you submit your question and you are done. Thank you so very much. I will stop sharing my screen and go back to Colonel Kumar to close us out. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Asa. I have a couple of questions, and since we have a little time, I'll pose this question. One is, does the census program affect the activities of the Houston Food Bank? Someone would like to take this question?
I will jump in. I'm not sure of the dollar amount, but yes, census data does impact our local nonprofits or organizations that give back to the community as far as food and donations. There is federal funding tied to those organizations. So census data really impacts everyone's life every day, whether you realize it or not, from highway to road construction to new business development to fixing a park in your neighborhood. Is tied to census data. People want to know where, what the people, how many people are in an area, what they look like, and things of that sort. And the census data provides that. So I would say that yes, census data, census responses does impact the Houston Food Bank and other nonprofits and organizations in the Houston area.
Thank you so much. I have another question, and this is for Cesar. This is about your presentation, wonderful presentation. So somebody has asked, would you be willing to share your presentation slides by email or some other electronic means with the participants?
Love to, yes. If you would like to put your email address in the chat, we can definitely send you that PowerPoint, and hopefully you're able to present it to your friends and family and neighbors about how to complete the census, and I can also send it to you in Spanish as well.
Thank you, Sasa. I would now say about the question and answer. As we had announced initially, we will have some prize for them. And I think Sasa had asked me, I was telling her to choose, but she has left it to me. And I see two wonderful participants, Alice Lee and Dr. Henry. And I would like to give this prize to them for very actively participating and in the question and answer and the best questions. I would request, before we close today's webinar, I'll request our President, Dr. Manish Rungta, to some closing words, and then I'll come back.
Sorry, I just had to unmute myself there. So thank you so much to everyone. That was just a wonderful presentation, and really enjoyed it. We want to thank the Honorable Mayor, Sylvester Turner, Councilman Member Pollard, all the panelists for all their hard work and participation, and certainly all of our participants participating in this program was very well. It was very informative. I learned a lot myself. I have done the census for our family, and it's relatively simple, very straightforward, easy to do. And I can only echo the sentiments and words of everybody else on this panel. It's so vital to do it. It's quick, and we want to be represented as the city of Houston and each one of us. So it's something that's very worthwhile to do. So I encourage everybody to do it. It's really, really quick. It doesn't take a lot of effort to do. So please do your part and fill out the census. And I want to thank everyone for participating once again. A very informative session.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rungta. It was, as usual, it was wonderful having such a august panelist. We enjoyed. I would like to change my view to gallery view so that we can see all the panelists. Of course, Mayor Turner and Councilman Edward Pollard had to leave, and we'll one by one show each one of you. And thank you. Sam, can you hear me? Wave your hand.
Yes, hi. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Sasa Marshall.
Bye. Thank you for having me today. Take the census and tell a friend, family member and a friend.
Brianna.
Thanks for having me. Go to my2020census.gov right now to respond.
Alenda.
Muchísimas gracias. Thanks for having us, and please complete your census. Hagan su censo.
Dr. Rungta.
Thank you again for allowing me to participate. Really was informative, and everybody, please fill out the census. Thank you.
And I also want to definitely thank our staff, which did wonderful work to put together this thing, and also want to thank Namaste Radio for giving us technical help, and Manav Rungta, who has helped us in all the technical aspects. Thank you, everyone, and thank you so much. Thank you for all the help, and we enjoyed. And I think people would have. I just want to put a slide, give my number so that you can know where to send your details so that we can send the prize to you.
Mr. Kumar, unmute yourself, Colonel.
Okay, you can send me an email, or you can call this number 713-929-1900, and we'd love to present you with the whatever gift they have Census Bureau has sent for you. And once again, thank you everyone for participation. Thank you panelists for giving words of wisdom and making everybody knowledgeable about census. And we'll host these programs soon. We are planning to host one in Spanish language and any other language if you want to. You are welcome. India House is your house, our house, my house. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.